What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court. I am Sean Murphy, and today we have some big news to talk about. Now, if you are a follower of this channel, you might have seen that this time last week, I actually did a video about John Wall. In fact, you can click right here to go and watch it. But anyway, not only did I make a video about John Wall, a lot of it ended up being about his past and questions regarding his future. And today we got some answers. According to Shams, it looks like John Wall and the Houston Rockets are mutually agreeing to part ways and that they are going to be looking for a trade partner in order to acquire John Wall. John Wall, it sounds like he's still going to show up to training camp, but he is not going to be playing another game as a Houston Rockets player, which is probably one of the least shocking things that has happened this offseason, but it does still have a air of uncertainty about it because John Wall, just to give a little bit of context, is coming off of a torn Achilles, and that is the most difficult injury that any NBA player can come off of, especially for a player like John Wall, who a lot of his game really was reliant on his athleticism, his athletic ability, and everything that he could do that other players simply couldn't. But now, John Wall, being at the age of 31, on the other side of a bad injury, and is coming off of a season that saw his lowest efficiency ratings of his entire career, and he has one of the biggest salaries in the league. Not only is he the second biggest salary for any NBA point guard, he is currently the second biggest salary in the entire league. So that's a really difficult situation to be in if I'm John Wall. Now, it sounds like John Wall's in a really difficult situation, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. So today, I want to talk about 3 possible scenarios for John Wall and for the Rockets and what I think is likely to happen, and I would love to hear your thoughts as well. So with that, let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think is going to happen with John Wall? And with it, let's get right into it. So the first thing I see happening with John Wall is that John Wall could be traded to a team as a salary dump. And I think if you are John Wall, if you are the Houston Rockets, this is probably the best case scenario, right? John Wall having as big of a salary as he does, especially with that player option that he has in the second year. His contract currently has a total of $91 million left to it over the next 2 years. So obviously John Wall is not going to be a $91 million basketball player, and no team is going to want to take him on as a $91 million player. The only way that these salary deals happen is if they attach some form of compensation, whether it be a draft pick, whether it be another young player that the team likes, just so that they're getting something out of the deal. And in turn, Houston can ultimately have that freed off of their salary cap over the next couple years. So obviously that's not really super likely to happen with the current situation that we see and with the amount that John Wall is owed. It's just way too hard to make that happen, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. There are teams out there like the Oklahoma City Thunder who, outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they really aren't paying anybody on that team. Other than Shai's current contract, the other highest paid player on that team is currently Derek Favors, if that gives you any kind of idea. So they're in a situation where they could possibly take on a salary like that, but even then, Houston would have to trade picks and give up some of their young players. And when you're in the very beginning of a rebuild, that just doesn't seem like a great thing to do, especially when you want to build around Jalen Green and everything that you have going on there. So that's probably the first scenario that Houston's looking at. The second, and this is probably the biggest long stretch of them all, is that Philly is probably looking over there and pondering just getting Ben Simmons out of the 76ers organization. That is right. The second scenario is that John Wall gets traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, personally, I think this is at about a 0% chance. I don't see this happening in any way. But if you were looking at what the easiest possible move could be, it would be just 1-for-1 John Wall for Ben Simmons. Now, obviously, that's not something that Philly's going to really want to do, because you would be not only taking on $12 million more of a salary, but you're also taking on those injury risks. And quite frankly, you're not getting any closer to a championship. you would just essentially, the only thing that would do as far as a benefit for your team is that it would be good to ultimately get Ben Simmons out of the 76ers organization, but also it allows you to get someone like John Wall who fits better with Joel Embiid, and they can run a pick and roll, and they can possibly have a better flowing offense, and by that standard it could be addition by subtraction. But generally you don't want to just trade a player who, even though Ben Simmons has his questions and has his moments, like, you know, just straight up passing up a open free throw or open layup in an Eastern Conference Finals game, you know, your moments, you know, something we all do. Mistakes happen, right? But obviously that is not going to be something that ultimately Philly's going to want to do. The only way that happens is if they can possibly get someone in return, someone that like could actually help them now. And even then, I was thinking maybe Eric Gordon, but that's about $60 million in salary between John Wall and Eric Gordon, and they're not going to want to trade anybody else. So those pieces just doesn't work. So in my opinion, I don't see this scenario happening, but with how limited of the scenarios there are out there, this is probably the only other one that would be possible. So that is my second scenario for John Wall. And the third and final scenario, and this is one that's a little bit darker, but this is just the truth. John Wall might just have to wait. And that's just the situation that he's in. You know, it's especially if you're not willing to give up those player option dollars, that $91 million that he is owed, which if I was him, I wouldn't, especially with his injury scenario, with everything that he's gone through. Definitely don't give up that kind of generational wealth. I mean, heck, I'd take $91, let alone $91 million. So if I was John Wall, I would by no means give up on that. And I think he has every right to not want to. But on the flip side, with every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, right? And if I'm looking at the John Wall situation, if he's deciding, okay, I'm not going to be giving up this money, I'm sorry, I'm staying put on that, then me as an NBA executive is going to go, okay, man, hey, you do that, good for you. You're not touching my books. You are not going to be in my team. The only way that's going to happen is if I get some crazy draft picks out of it, unless I get some crazy talent out of it, or if you just pay me to do it a lot of money. And that is the thing, is that Houston is what they would have to go through a lot to make this deal happen. And John Wall is currently not a player that is looking to ever be an all-star again. And that's just the unfortunate reality, is that the value is only going to be what we have seen lately. And what we saw out of John Wall in the 2021 season was both flashes of some of that old greatness and why teams liked him in the first place, but mostly it was either not playing a lot because he still missed about 30 games, or the games that he did play, he ultimately just didn't really look like himself, and he just looked really inefficient, and he's still taking way too many jump shots, and he's not really a good jump shooter. So therefore, not really something you're going to be looking for on a contending team. And so I do hope John Wall eventually does get into a situation where he can go prove that he can contribute to a championship team. I do hope that he can get bought out at some point, and that ultimately he could still get his bag and help chase a championship. Heck, it would be cool to just see like a career renaissance or something to the likes of Derrick Rose as well, right? To where ultimately you question if he can ever get to any point again where he's a productive NBA player, and then he ultimately goes out and plays like Derrick Rose. You know, that would be incredible, but unfortunately I question with how much that can happen with John Wall, especially with his current state of his jump shot. So if he wants to have a long-term career in this league, I don't think it's a secret that he would really have to get that jump shot going, and he would have to get that jump shot going fast. And if there's any scenario that this really reminds me of, this kind of feels like the Cam Newton situation in the NFL, right? Where, you know, once that burst is gone, like because with Cam Newton, once that burst went, he didn't really have much of a passing game. And now he's in a situation where he's not on any team, and there's probably not going to be a team that's going to be looking for him right now. And unfortunately for John Wall, I don't really know a team that's going to be looking for him either. So with that, I wish all the best for John Wall. I think Houston is making a smart decision here. Ultimately, they have to look at the future, and they have guys like Jalen Green that you definitely don't want to be taking any kind of touches away from. But with that, again, I would love to know your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen with John Wall? Do you think there is a realistic fit for him anywhere in the league right now? And what team would it be? Do you want him on your team? Again, let me know in the comments. But of course, that is going to do it this time from Half Court. The podcast will be back next week. And thank you so much for watching. We will catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.